So, a massive new study on sexuality just dropped in France, and wow, it has uncovered something really fascinating, a real paradox right at the heart of our modern relationships.
Okay, so on one side, you have this picture of incredible sexual freedom, more diversity than ever before. And this is the weird part, on the other side, it looks like people are actually having less partnered sex. How does that even work? What is going on here?
Yeah, this isn't just some simple little trend, it's a really complex contradiction. And it tells a much, much bigger story. A story about consent, technology, and really the entire future of our intimate lives.
All right, let's dive into the first half of this puzzle, this explosion of diversity. I mean, we're talking about sexuality expanding in ways that honestly would have been completely unimaginable just a generation or two ago.
Okay, let's start with this number. For women, the average number of lifetime partners in 2023 was almost 8. Now, get this. That's more than double what it was back in 1992. That is a huge jump in a relatively short amount of time.
And it's not just a story about women. Take a look at this. For men, we're seeing a really significant increase too. The average number of lifetime partners has jumped to over 16 in 2023. A pretty big leap.
But you know, this whole story is about so much more than just the number of partners. We're seeing this massive shift in what a sexual life even means. Just look at this. The percentage of women who've masturbated, it's gone from around 42% in '92 to almost 73% today. That's a major change.
And this right here really shows how our sexual repertoires, the things people are doing, are expanding. For men, for example, practices like anal sex have almost doubled. That's a huge indicator of a much broader shift in the whole sexual landscape.
And then there's identity. This is where things get really interesting, especially with younger people. A remarkable number, almost 38% of young women now identify as not strictly heterosexual. That's more than double the rate for young men. Wow.
Of course, you can't talk about modern sexuality without talking about the internet, right? The digital revolution is a huge piece of this. Get this. A staggering 64% of women under 30 have had some kind of online sexual experience. It's like a whole new frontier of intimacy has just opened up.
Okay, so that's one side of the coin, right? The expansion, the diversity. But now here's where the paradox really kicks in. Despite all of that, some really key measures of sexual activity are actually going down.
For instance, for decades, the average age of first intercourse was getting younger and younger. Well, now that trend has reversed. It's actually starting to tick back up for both men and women.
And it's not just about when people start having sex. It's also about how often they're having it later on. If you look at the data over the last 30 years, there's been this slow but steady decline in the number of people who've had partnered sex at all in the last year.
And check this out. Even for people who are in relationships, the frequency of sex has dropped. And not by a little, by about 25% since 1992. That is a huge drop.
So you gotta ask, what's behind this decline? Well, a major clue is right here in this quote from the report. It shows that the number of women having sex just to please a partner, without really wanting it themselves, has gone down. This points to a massive cultural shift around desire and, importantly, consent.
Okay, so how do we make sense of this? How can sexuality be expanding and contracting at the exact same time? Well, the report suggests something pretty profound, that maybe they aren't contradictory at all. Maybe they're actually two sides of the very same coin.
Think about it. The exact same forces that are driving all this new diversity, things like a bigger focus on consent, on what you actually desire, on your individual identity, well, those are the same forces leading to less obligatory sex. And that means less frequent partnered sex overall. It really seems to be a shift from quantity to quality.
So this new sexual world we're living in, it's really being shaped by a few key things. People want more satisfying experiences, there's a much greater awareness of consent, digital intimacy is a real thing, and hey, people are just spending more time being single between relationships.
And nothing shows this change in consciousness more than this number right here. Nearly 30% of women now report having experienced sexual violence. Now, that's almost double the figure from 2006. And this huge jump likely reflects a profound and, frankly, long overdue shift in awareness, the ability to name and condemn acts that for too long were just normalized.
But of course, this completely new sexual landscape, well, it brings a whole new set of challenges with it. And that's especially true when we start talking about sexual health and prevention.
So, to put it simply, the old kind of one-size-fits-all model of sexuality is fading away. What's taking its place is something that's way more diverse, way more digital, and also much more deliberate in how we approach our intimate lives.
And you can see the real-world impact of this everywhere. Take contraception, for instance. There's been a dramatic decline in the use of the birth control pill. In fact, for the first time ever in France, the IUD is now the most common method.
But these changes aren't always straightforward. They have consequences. For example, the rise in unintended pregnancies shows that as people's contraceptive habits shift, new and unexpected public health challenges can pop up. And all of this really leaves us with a final critical question. As our intimate lives are being fundamentally reshaped, are we prepared to meet the new challenges to our health, education, and safety? The future of our sexual well-being really depends on the answer.